let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in
What is that process that a developer, or let's say,
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hours Live. I am co-host Andrew Sullivan, joined as always by somebody what's your name again?
I don't know, dude. It's been so long I barely recognize you anymore. You know?
I know. So thank you all for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it. I hope everyone realizes that this is the first time we've been on in a while. I think in the last 2 months, I think we've done one stream. It was just me. Jonny, you were on a bit of extended leave, and the wall is falling on you. And
my dogs, they're killing me.
I see. Nothing's changed in the last 2 months. There's still constant drama.
But at least my reaction time's getting better.
But yeah, it was a little bit of a, I won't say planned hiatus. The combination of your being out was planned. My being unavailable was not. My kids were so today's trash day here in Raleigh, or in my neighborhood rather, and just wanted to show off the cool shirt. I mean, it is a nice shirt, but so today's trash day, and our recycling only comes every other week. My garage is approximately half cardboard at this point, because literally for the last 7, I think, basically at least 6, if not 7 recycling weeks, I haven't been here. I've been traveling. Like last week it was Summit. The week before that it was a customer meeting. The week before that it was doing a road show. The week before that it was architecture meeting. So it was one of those we knew that you were going to be out. I was not planning for all of this lead up into Summit and all these other things going on and all the craziness and everything else. So thank you to our audience for sticking with us, for being patient. We greatly appreciate all of y'all joining us, and we're very excited to be back and joined today by Subin. So Subin's on the OpenShift product management team, and I'll let you introduce yourself, Subin.
Thanks, Ali. My name is Subin. I'm a product manager for OpenShift updates. I'm happy to be here. This is my first podcast on Ask the Admin session. So excited to be here and face all the questions.
Yeah, and we're happy to have you here because I think, and Jonny, you can you can confirm or deny, updates are one of those things that we get asked about just about every stream, it seems like. So yeah, yep. I know you all published, and it's been at least a year, if not a year and a half now. You published a pretty exhaustive blog post on the entire update process and all that. So I'm curious to know if there's been any updates, and kind of dig in and let the audience ask questions.
Sure. I think we have added quite a few changes. What I really want to talk about today is the new lifecycle changes which we added, and also a couple of things we have on our roadmap, which is really going to help our users make the update process more easier. In the past, we have seen that the update process is sometimes problematic. It is a distributed system, and we have a lot of components, and to update all of them and get it working, it is a challenge, but it's problematic sometimes. So for those sometimes, what can we do? What are the things on the roadmap? I just want to share that. I have some slides. Let me know when I can share that.
So it has been a minute since we've done this, hasn't it, Jonny? I'm out of practice here.
We're out of sync, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, let's cover that here in a moment, Subin. I don't want to interrupt your flow because we want to do a quick top of mind segment here and talk about a few things. One of the things I'd actually set aside was what you're going to talk about. So that helps us get through it faster. First, again, thank you to our audience for joining us. This is an office hours live stream here on Red Hat TV. Or no, this is Red Hat TV. Red Hat TV is what I did at Summit. This is Red Hat live streaming. So that means for our audience, please don't hesitate to ask any questions that come to mind, whether or not it's related to today's topic. Jonny and I will do our best to answer those questions. and Subin, of course, you're more than welcome to contribute as well.
Mhm.
If we don't know the answers, which let's be honest happens probably more often than not, we'll do our best to find the answers by either looking at the internal information. I say internal information as though it's something other than the documentation, or asking some of the other folks on the Red Hat Slack channels, engineering, product management, etc., to see if we can get answers. If we can't during the live stream, we'll just follow up next week. So be sure to tune in or be sure to watch us recorded next week. That being said, if you are watching us recorded, not live, please feel free to reach out. You're more than welcome to send an email. So my email address is sully, SULLY, at redhat.com, or you can reach out to Jonny, JONNY, at redhat.com. We love to get emails from anyone and everyone. We'll do our best to answer those, and then we tend to bring them up here on the live stream as well to help the wider audience. Yes, Red Hat TV was awesome too. Those folks did an amazing job. If anybody was at Summit, they had a really nice booth. Like, it was enclosed, and they had a really nice recording studio in there. One of the folks on my team did a recording for OpenShift virtualization and Ansible, which I think turned out really well. So I don't know how they're going to publish those aside from Red Hat TV. I should probably ask that question. But yeah, I know the media team behind those. They're awesome folks. I worked with them for a video recording that should be going live pretty soon, as soon as I get the demo recordings over to them for OpenShift virtualization. Anyways, yeah. So all that being said, top of mind, Jonny. I feel like clearly 2 months, like a lot of things have happened.
Yeah.
I don't know that we can possibly revisit all of the things that have happened over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I think like just from an internal, not even like an internal, but like a Kubernetes perspective, there's a new release of Kubernetes. I was just trying to find the name because it was really awesome, and it's not like it kind of like I don't want to say against, but it's just different from all the other release names. So like I'll find it and I'll post it out here. It was just such an awesome name, and it was like very clever, and I was just like, man, I love it. And a lot of new features that are coming out, right? So. Scupper had an update, so there's a lot of good things coming out of the Scupper Red Hat Service Interconnect. I'm sorry, yeah, for all of us Red Hatters, all the Red Hat Service Interconnect product managers still kill me. But yeah, so like you're right. There's just so much that's coming up. But like the big things that like I was excited to see were like the Scupper updates, or the Service Interconnect updates, and the Kubernetes release. And then I think we've got another OpenShift release coming up pretty soon, in a month or so. So like more good things
Soonish.
on the way.
You know my philosophy, so it's targeted for Q2. Take from that what you will. I am deliberately vague about it because literally until the bits are out the door, it can slip at any time. So I try not to give precise dates, even though there are precise dates that engineering targets, because we're on. This will be OpenShift 4.16, which will make it the 16th release. Because there was no 4.0, there was 4.1, so it's actually 16, not 17. And I don't know that any of them have actually made the original date. They almost always slip by at least a day or 5.
Yeah.
So yeah, right now it's targeting Q2. Hopefully we don't slip out into Q3, but we'll see.
Yeah, I did have one more thing real quick. It's just more of a like we talked about it a long time ago about like ODF on HyperShift. So if you were using, if you have a HyperShift cluster and you're deploying ODF, because of the way that ODF interacted with the Cloud Credential Operator, it wasn't configured, or it didn't support STS at that point. With the release of 4.15, it does support STS now, and like ODF can now deploy on HyperShift. The thing that you have to do or be careful of, I guess, is when you create your hosted cluster, you need to spread it across availability zones, especially if you're doing anything with replication or HA, right, within the ODF operator. But once you have that set up, everything works just the way it's supposed to. Like I've tested it a bunch of times in the last week or so, and yeah, it's awesome now. So just wanted to put that out there.
Seeing that come to fruition is really interesting to me because there's a lot of I'll say a lot of interest around hosted control planes, OpenShift virtualization, ODF, all of that other stuff, and so I'm really happy to see all these things coming together where now we can use that underlying ODF cluster, more better, not a real phrase, but I'm going to use it anyways.
More better.
So we do see all of the questions that are popping in. So please continue to pop those in. I'm going to do a real quick recap of Summit, and then we'll roll through a bunch of these questions here. So we'll try and answer all of those and get through as many as we can. And then we definitely want to leave time for Subin to talk about updates. So Summit this year was it was a different experience for me, to say the least. So for anyone who doesn't know, I had the privilege of introducing or doing a demo of OpenShift Lightspeed during the day 2 keynote. So as the backstage team reminded me, it's my 3 minutes of fame, so I still have 12 minutes remaining for some future usage, because my segment was about 3 minutes. I think I went a little bit over. But it was a lot of fun. I got to go up on stage there in the theater and, in front of however many thousands of our closest friends, and just showcase the really awesome work of the OpenShift Lightspeed team. So I will fully admit that I am just the not so pretty face that got to introduce it. All of the work has been done by my peer, Eric Jacobs, who we're trying to get to come on the live stream here in the next few weeks to talk about it. But there's also the whole product management team. So Gaurav Singh, who has been on the stream before, as well as the engineering folks and everybody else. Just amazing work that they've done. And it was really a lot of fun to work with that and to show it off. And I'm really excited to talk to Eric about it and showcase it, because I think it's going to have sort of big impact to us as administrators. And I hope fundamentally change for the better a lot of the things that we spend a lot of time on. So the demo that I did was just, it's an AI chatbot, right? Or an AI enhanced, AI enabled chatbot. And so the goal isn't to replace me or you, Jonny, right? The goal is to make it so that we can do our jobs more efficiently, so that I don't have to go and it's like, oh, how do I, turn on this feature? How do I do this? And I got to go into the docs and I got to search around and I got to find the right thing. Instead, I ask it in plain language, how do I do this? Or what does it mean if I do this? And it gives me back an answer that hopefully more quickly finds the result. That's sort of the initial alpha phase. And I know they've got a bunch of other plans as they go forward and add things before GA. I'm very much looking forward to it. I think that there's a lot of really interesting things. So that was my little segment of the worlds during the keynote. Day 1 keynotes were all about AI. Big announcements there. So IBM open sourced the Granite large language modules, which is really cool. InstructLabs is open source, so I'm wearing one of the InstructLabs t-shirts today. InstructLabs, it's a really interesting thing, right? And it's sort of mind-boggling of what's happening behind the scenes is I create basically some knowledge, right? 3, 5, 10 different things that say, the example I used during the keynote is math, like 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 2 = 3. And, provide it questions and answers. And then it uses a model itself to generate additional data based off of what I put in there to then enhance the model, the original model itself, with more information. So you take your knowledge and turn it into skills that then enhance the underlying model to give it more information. Really cool stuff, really interesting stuff, and has some really, again, long-ranging impacts. Not the least of which is if you haven't looked at it, and please do go look at it, it makes it very straightforward for anyone to contribute knowledge into an LLM, into a model. So again, the concept for me, and I talked about this in the OpenShift Lightspeed demo, is, hey, Andrew has knowledge. Andrew is aware of things. Jonny is aware of things. We can go in and we can write these question answer type things and teach it the expert knowledge that we have. I say expert knowledge. Subin's the expert here, right? We're just here to ask questions and extract that knowledge. But it's exactly that, right? It's taking, you could take exactly this live stream that we're doing here and all of the questions that we have and write out the answers and then feed it into that LLM through InstructLabs, and then it would be able to more effectively answer those questions for us instead of just relying on, scraping the docs or something like that. So lots of just really cool and exciting stuff there.
I like. I'm sorry, I'm rude as hell. No, but I like how you phrased it initially coming into it, right? It's it's not a replacement, it's an enhancement, right? It's another tool in the tool belt. It's to make you, me, them, everyone better, right? It's not meant to displace a job or anything like that. It's literally meant to make you quicker, better, faster at your job, right? Or
Yeah.
at the task that you're trying to get done.
Yeah. So yeah, I know, and I talked to a bunch of people at Summit. I was in, I don't know, 20 something customer briefing center meetings. So meeting one-on-one with customers and partners to talk about all kinds of different things. I was in, co-hosted multiple labs, was in the booth. I talked to, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of people. One, it was very nice to meet all of you. Two, you all are extremely kind. And thank you so much for all of the very nice words you had to say about the live stream and everything else. So we do greatly appreciate it. And some very, very kind person came up to me on Thursday while I was in the Ask an OpenShift Expert section of the booth. And actually, they gave me a gift, which is just mind-blowing to me. So they said that these are things that they make. They're like, it's like a little dongle. And I hooked it on my backpack. I use it as a zipper pull. So thank you so much. That was very kind of you. And I do greatly appreciate it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm just floored. I'm blown away. So thank you. But where was I going? Just talking with a lot of people, I think some people felt that there was almost an overemphasis on AI, particularly during the keynotes. Maybe, but I feel like AI and the way that it's getting integrated into all of the different products and offerings, not just from Red Hat, but sort of across all of the industries, it feels like an inflection point. So, I think as a person who works for, a company, a vendor who provides, IT products, services, et cetera, I think we have to be, in this, we have to be doing this. We have to be contributing. We have to be making it, easier, better, faster, so on and so forth. Because, if we don't create OpenShift Lightspeed, then one of our competitors might create something like that for their Kubernetes, and then so on and so forth. Not to mention, it's good for y'all, good for our customers. Of if I can take something that used to take Jonny 30 minutes and now it takes him 5, like that's a huge win for everybody. So
I think the solution aspect of it, right? I think that's where Red Hat is finally kind of. I don't want to say finally. I don't want to bash Red Hat at all, but like we're seeing the light. We've been a product company for a long time, and now I think that we're coming up with some of these solutions that we can drop in, and then some our customers can be able to use them instead of having to take our products and then develop a solution that's similar to what we showcase in like a proof of concept or anything like that. But like I think having a solution that they can use it's the right way.
Yep. Yeah. So anyways, that's really all I had about Summit. I mean, I could talk for hours on Summit itself and all of the things that we had going on. It's funny. I talked with Aubrey, who is our product marketing person in charge of the booth. And like, we had these big plans of like, oh, it would be awesome if we could do like daily live stream recaps and stuff like that. And we were both like, and kind of everybody who was there was so oversubscribed. I had meetings starting at 7 a.m. every day. And usually my last like customer meeting was like 6:30 in the evening. And then like I didn't get to go to any, with the exception of the OpenShift event, I didn't go to any of the other things because it was like, we would go to a customer dinner, we would go and, work with this account team, or I think it was Tuesday was when all the regions were doing their appreciation celebrations. Like I didn't go to the OpenShift or to the event, the Summit event, because I was at a dinner and then I went and it was just exhausting in the best possible way. Honestly,
that's awesome. So I want to steal Subin's question from the pre-show. What was your favorite part?
I don't know. So a lot of things were my favorite part. Overall, the energy of this summit was easily my favorite. So I don't know how many. Somebody asked me, and I don't remember if it was the elevator. No, it was the airport. So we landed in Denver. I was with one of my people, Alan, and we were on the little shuttle train to go from the terminal over to baggage claim and the exit and all that. And one of the people noticed that we had Red Hat backpacks. And I think he was from a partner and was asking us like, oh yeah, is this your first summit? And like, no, this is probably like my 20th Red Hat event. Cause I used to go to Summit and Partner Exchange and Tech Exchange and Red Hat One and Red Hat Sun. Like I've done a lot of these, and like this was one of my favorite ones. Just the overall energy and excitement, and everybody was just I don't. It's hard to describe. I thoroughly enjoyed the keynote and the team of folks that were there. It's not my first keynote, but I always just so deeply appreciate the team of people behind those things, and it's
Oh yeah.
fascinating to watch happen. So what the world didn't see and probably has no idea about is day 2, the keynote. We actually rearranged the whole thing moments before we went on. So if you were watching it, you notice that we started about 10 minutes late. And that's because we were waiting on a couple of things. And so they like rearranged the whole schedule. And like, the only thing that happened when it was supposed to happen was me going on stage because I was first. Everything after that got rearranged. So that was pretty something. And the team of folks behind that, the stage manager, the people who manage the slides with the big banner, the people who do the like all of that, it's like magic watching them work in be synchronized in how they deliver that dance. The labs team did a phenomenal job. I cannot express my appreciation enough for anybody who knows Wolfgang Kolinek. He and Alan on my team spent the week beforehand. Like, Wolfgang completely rebuilt the virtualization environment that we were hosting that thing off of in like the 3 days before Summit. Like,
Yes.
Just so many, and individual heroics are like, I always feel like individual heroics are a failure in some way of the broader system. But like, it wasn't a failure so much as just he saw what needed to be done and got it done. And the lab was amazing. Everything went without a hit. Went off without a hitch. I'll say mostly. We did have an internet problem at the at the conference at the venue. Because all of the labs, like we had 500 people kick off their lab at basically the same time, and they all open an OpenShift console. And then it wants to download literal megabytes of JavaScript libraries and everything else across all of those people, and it just saturated the internet for like a solid 10 minutes at the beginning of the lab session.
Yeah.
So that was always interesting.
I think the summit is always about heroics. I think it's a big magic show, basically, to get all that thing done, happen on the stage without any hiccups, any problems. I've been there once. I've seen it happen. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of luck that things go smoothly.
Yeah.
It's a huge orchestra, right? Like, it's just, everything's got to be in sync. Yeah. I mean, it's so much work.
Yeah. So I talked with Kathy. So Kathy is the Red Hat person who is in charge of the expo floor, and like that's a whole. I don't know how the event coordinators and the people that do that. I don't know how they do that. Like, it's just mind-boggling of juggling not just the Red Hat booths that were in the central portion, but all of the partner booths and all the things that they need, and the puppy pen, and like all these other things that are going on, and food and entertainment, and I don't know. It's always just so impressive to me, and it's such a massive effort. So I'll stop rambling. Feel free to ask questions and stuff in the chat. I'll do my best to respond to all the various chats and stuff. I don't want to take up too much of the time here. I will say, so the very last thing, not related to Summit, but slightly selfishly, I will share the link for, we created an OpenShift virtualization reference architecture / implementation guide. Selfishly, I was one of the major contributors to it. But if you're interested in OpenShift virtualization and using it for data center virtualization, hosting, whatever you want, this is our opinionated way of deploying it. So not the only way to do it, not the, you have to do it this way or anything like that, but rather here's the constraints, here's the things that we think, and here's how we think you should do it. So definitely share that out, and let us know if you have any comments. So there's the link to that. And with that, let's look at, I haven't been looking at any of the questions here. I'm going to scroll back up to the top and see what we got.
There's a ton of questions. So I don't know if we want to give Subin a chance to do his topic and then come back to the questions, or if we want to kind of mix it up. Like, it's up to you.
Are there any questions related to what we've talked about so far that we should address? I thought I saw something about like AI. How did the new approach to AI with lab impact upgrades for OpenShift AI? Did that change anything for upgrades? So OpenShift AI is an AI platform on top of OpenShift. So it gives you all of the tools in order to go in and create models, deploy models, etc. So it is not itself running a model unless it's one of yours that you're serving out. OpenShift Lightspeed is a model that is providing, chat like interactions inside of the cluster. So it is a little bit confusing in that respect. I don't know that. So the lab aspect, so InstructLab, for example, would be one of the things that you use in order to fine tune your model after you have done the initial training. I don't know, and maybe we should consider bringing on some of the OpenShift AI folks, Jonny. Now that InstructLab is out there in the world and released and everything, in order to talk about exactly that. How does InstructLab and OpenShift AI work together? How can is InstructLab something that can be deployed on top of OpenShift and utilized that way? If you were at Summit and you did one of the labs in the InstructLab thing, I think all of that was running off of Podman Desktop. So you can go in and see that. I was talking with somebody. They have what did he say? Like one of the new Mac studios with like the M1 Ultra or M2 or whatever, like going through and rebuilding, completely retraining the model in like 3 hours or something using the Apple Silicon chip, which is pretty impressive. But
That's
the
awesome.
nice thing about Instruct Labs is you don't have to completely retrain the model, right? It augments it. It adds on to it. So let's see, Jill. So the AI fetches documentation for you. I don't. That's a good question. I don't know if OpenShift AI uses RAG or not. I think it can use RAG depending on the model that you're using. But if you saw in the keynote, we used the first one we used was the Watson X. That one does use RAG, and then we used a RHEL AI trained or augmented model with InstructLab, and that one was not using RAG, from what I recall. So it's a little column A, little column B, and it depends on a number of factors. And if anybody in the chat or anybody watching, if I'm speaking incorrectly, please do not hesitate to correct me.
I think the Lightspeed is using RAG.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought it depended on the model and the model serving engine that we're using, though. But I could be wrong on that. So I know
Sure.
Watson. I know Watson X uses RAG.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the challenges with relying on AI? Hallucinations. This is one of those where I think until the broader AI community, set of products figures out like how do we stop hallucinations from happening. So hallucinations are when the LLM responds back with things that it has basically made up. So there's been a number of cases of this in the media where like there's lawyers who rely on rely on an LLM and say, oh, give me case precedent, or precedent cases that are precedent for this type of scenario. And it'll come back and it'll have 10 responses and like 9 of them are real and 1 of them is completely fabricated. And so unless the human goes and validates that, it's pretty convincing, right? So I think the same thing could be said of even if it's ingesting OpenShift documentation, maybe it's pulling together various things from various areas and it just makes an assumption and it spits out something that isn't necessarily real. And this is where the experience of the administrator really comes into play, and we don't just want to blindly copy and paste what's happening. So off the top of my head, that would be my probably the biggest challenge for me on wholly relying on AI is we still need someone who is an expert or at least has some knowledge and some ability to go in and validate or verify. Jonny, Subin, I don't know if you have anything you want to add there.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at OpenAI, I mean, there's a way you can feed it a bunch of documents and then just answer from only that set of documents. I mean, there are a lot of tools on OpenAI which
Yeah.
can let you do that. And I don't know if you've seen the latest model from OpenAI. It actually speaks to you.
No, I haven't seen it. I
It's
saw the
crazy.
announcement. I haven't actually used it.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, it's just so you're so used to Apple Siri, and now you're used to this one. It's like so different. Everything is getting better and better every
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, I'm not going to say her name out loud because she'll respond. And
Oops, sorry. Yeah.
no, that's why I use headphones. But no, I won't say her name out loud. But I did see an announcement from Apple the other day saying that they were enhancing, their personality, I guess,
Mhm.
to add in all of that stuff. So lots of stuff just happening overall. Yeah, overemphasis. We did the same thing about containers. Yeah, you could argue we're almost still doing that in some ways. Rel image mode. I'm curious what folks think of rel image mode. If you didn't see that one, it's so you use literally a container image file definition, and it defines what effectively becomes an operating system. And so we're all familiar with, or I assume most of us, OpenShift admin, right? So we're familiar with CoreOS and how CoreOS works, right? We have the RPM OS tree layers that get deployed and then put on top of the underlying CoreOS, and that's how we apply updates. Well, this just kind of takes it a step further, and it's the entire operating system that's shipped as a container. And now I can effectively boot that as the operating system to a virtual machine, to even a physical server. I think so. Just a really interesting way of deploying operating systems, and it takes the concept of with containers. Containers, in my opinion, they're like an evolution of RPMs, right? Historically, when I wanted to deploy an application, I do an RPM dash UVH or a local install, and I say install this RPM, and then me as the human, I go in and say here's the configuration for this file, or maybe I use Ansible to do that. Start this service, do these things, open this port, so on and so forth. Containers just package all of that up, including, doing those port definitions and all that. And then I rely on something like Podman or Kubernetes to expose those ports. Um, I feel like the RPM, or rel image mode stuff does the same thing with my entire operating system. It takes it and it bundles it and packages it. So let's see. Spring Boot 3 backend. I don't know anything about Spring Boot. Swagger UI. I mean, I know Spring Boot is Java. Does that count? What role does Fedora CoreOS play in building the upgrade methodologies? That's a question for you, Subin. We'll tackle that one here in a moment. How to recover old OpenShift cluster? The Kube API server isn't responding. So if Kube API server isn't responding, I would say figure out why Kube API server isn't responding. If you have etcd backups, or if at least one control plane node is still running, you could probably recover the control plane and restart that. But if there's something that's preventing the API server from running, then the nodes aren't going to be able to talk to it anyways. So definitely something to dig into there. Check the API server logs, check for and check the control plane nodes. Look for things like out of resource conditions, pod scan schedule, that type of stuff. Is it possible to use external load balancer with API and ingress? Yes, it is. So it's in the documentation. Let me find that link real quick. It's in if you look in the IPI install instructions for vSphere, so installing on vSphere, and then installer provisioned infrastructure, and then installing a cluster, there is at the very bottom. All right, that needs to go away. Sorry, I clicked onto a tab and the stream started playing. Services for configuring an external load balancer. We'll just post that link there. But yeah, it's in the IPI install docs. Like the very last step of the IPI install docs rather is here's how to install an external or configure an external load balancer. Better this year as an expo participant. it was I liked this venue. The Denver Convention Center was really nice. The walk from the expo floor to the customer briefing center was lengthy, but the golf cart people were awesome. They were a lot of fun to ride with. They had so it was like second floor of the convention center was the big room where they had the expo. So you had to come out and go downstairs or escalator and then go back all the way to the other side and then up another set of escalators in to get into the CBC. Well, at a normal, walking pace, it's a solid 10 minutes of walking
Oh,
to get
dang.
between them. So they had golf carts, like 8-person golf carts that were running the whole
Oh,
time.
yeah.
And it took them like by the second half of the first day, they had figured out that in the big main walkway there was like a side where very few people walked, and they would just fly down through there. And it was slightly terrifying, but a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah, Subin, thank you. OpenShift AI is for ML ops. And we talked about, so actually the last stream that we had, which was me and Chris, I think. Was it Chris? No.
I know.
We talked about ML ops here on the stream. So yeah, Colonel Sanders versus Adam Sandler. Not quite. Thanks for the laugh, R-Hope9. Synaxis, what's the easiest way to learn programming? That depends on your learning type. For me, it's just hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
I very much look at programming as learn the fundamental constructs. So things like how logic statements work, if, then, else, loops, etc. And then after that, it's just syntax for whatever language you're using. But I'm not a developer, and I can write terrible Perl and even worse Python. I write okay Bash, or at least I used to, back when I still did that.
Back in my day.
Image mode doesn't really change things. That Subin concerns himself with. I don't think it changes the way that we do updates.
No.
CoreOS has always operated kind of like that. Yep, still RPM OS tree. Still hoping Red Hat will adopt the acronym RELO. Well, now I'm curious. Red Hat Enterprise Linux. What would the latter LO be?
Large language operator.
Yeah, fatal. I attended Summit, and yes, there was a lot of walking. I did not have an issue getting my 10,000 steps in each day. That is for sure. All right. So thank you all for the questions, comments, etc. I'm going to continue as Subin starts talking about OpenShift updates. I'm going to keep rolling through, and we'll do our best to answer any of these in the chat if we've missed any of them. And as we get towards the end, we'll give you plenty of warning. As we get towards the end, don't be afraid to bring them up again too. Apologies if we miss something. So updates, upgrades. So this is something I said before, Subin, that we talk about upgrades and updates a lot, and I want to be clear that this isn't necessarily about upgrade channels and like when upgrades get released and stuff like that. Although I think you do talk a little bit about that, but rather like the upgrade process and all of the things that go into that and all of the factors and all of the things that just happen during upgrades with OpenShift. It is, and this is one of the things I love about it, was one of the things I talk about. I did an analyst thing last week. I talked about how upgrades happen with OpenShift and OpenShift virtualization. Like it's one of the core defining things of OpenShift, particularly OpenShift 4, I think. So it seems mundane and almost routine, but I don't think the world appreciates just how much effort you and the team put into upgrades and updates and making sure that they happen as seamlessly as they do. So I'll get out of your way now and let you talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a good point. Update functionality is something which is essential for every software component out there, and many people just take it for granted. And in Kubernetes, this is a distributed system, and you had a lot of components talking via the API server and all that. And on top of that, you have your workload and applications. So you need to move this beast from one version to another, and also make sure that the workload is not disrupted and the end user, the customers, are happy. I think that's a lot of responsibility, and to do that every couple of months as the Kube API server and the Kube API changes happen and the component changes happen. I think it's quite challenging. And I probably need to share this slide. I don't know. Can I do that? Can I
Yeah.
share the screen here? Okay.
Yeah, and you said every couple of months. I'd say it's almost every week. Right? I mean, every week we've got some Z stream going out.
Yeah. So I kind of like this slide. It just kind of expresses all the effort which happens behind the curtain, and not many people see it. I mean, we have this development process and we have the testing process, everything on the left side. And what the user sees is what's GA on the right side. And even on the right side, we have the fast channel and the stable channel and the EOS channel. And so there's a lot of churning happening there to make sure that whatever we do on the left side translates to a stable GA release, which can be consumed by users, and there's no workload disruption. And there's less chance that our end application users are dissatisfied with the whole experience every 4 months or every 5 months. So we have a couple of changes which we have brought in. One is, if you see on the bottom right corner, we created something called known issues. This was something called as conditional updates before. So we converted that to known issues just to clarify what known issues are. So when we do a GA, and sometimes a regression issue is discovered after a release is done. So after it's GA'd, we find that there's some bug which it happens in a specific configuration, maybe with AWS uh, with a certain application, or vSphere with a certain networking or switch and all that. So we continue our release and we label some of our update paths as known issues. So that end user looks at the known issues and figures out that, okay, I'm not on AWS, and this particular issue in the GA release affects AWS cluster. So I am safe. So I can still consume that update version. So these are some minor changes which we made. Otherwise, what we continue to do is that we, once we do a GA, it goes to the fast channel, and then we kind of churn for 45 to 90 days, and only then qualify that as a stable. And whatever is in the stable goes automatically into the expedited update channel. I don't know if you have seen this, but I love this tool. A lot of our users use this tool to, look at the channels and all that. Have you used this tool, Sully? Can I ask you, like, how do you use this?
Oh yeah, I use this all the time. Every time I go in between versions, because usually I'll pull things from RHTP or even in my own lab, and if it's more than one release out, then I use this to look and see how I go between my different paths. So
Right. I mean, this particular tool, a lot of users for this. We try to track how many users we have for this per month. I think we have about 1,000 users per month for this tool. A lot of people are using this, and we kind of changed the layout of this. I don't know if you have used this last year. So between last year and this year, we have changed the layout a lot. We have added the update path as the first tab, and we moved the update graph to the end. This one is, it's a nice visualization. It shows all the edges for a particular version, but we felt that the update path is a better tool for users. For example, let's say a customer is at 4.14 and they want to see a path to 4.15, they can use this. But the main purpose of this tool was never that. This was mainly used for disconnected cluster. So if you're on a disconnected cluster, you have a image registry, but it has only limited set of edges. So we wanted users to use this to figure out, okay, what are the additional edges I need to add in the disconnected cluster. So
didn't know that.
was, yeah. But I know that a lot of users in the connected clusters are using it. but we highly recommend that they don't use this for that. I feel that the console can give you a better answer. And the reasoning behind that is there's a piece of logic which actually runs on the console, and it checks if the known issues are relevant in that cluster. So that piece of logic checks if this cluster is on AWS or vSphere, or some specific configuration with switches or OVN, blah blah, all that, and then it kind of gives a recommendation that a certain version is applicable to install for that cluster or not. So, but this is just a dumb tool which
So
does not know.
So the
that.
reason why I always check this, particularly when I'm going from like you have here from 414 to 415, is because previously, and by previously I mean the last time I remember it happening was probably 410 or 411, because that was the last time I did kind of day to day, or say longer term management of clusters. Most of my clusters these days are pretty ephemeral. Anyways, where the Z stream for, in this case, 4.14, like if you look in the upgrade tool, it'll say, oh, you can go to 4.14.24, but there is no path, there is no edge from 4.14 to 20.24 to 4.15 something, because the 4.15 Z stream that would match with that might have gotten pulled or might be delayed or something like that. So I ended up in a scenario where I couldn't make that last leap, the minor version leap, because I was on a Z stream that was too far ahead of the next minor version.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Other than
but do
that,
you?
I wholeheartedly agree with. I love the new interface of the upgrade tool inside of the cluster, because to your point, like if I look in here and I look at this, it gives me this whole long list of conditional updates, because it
Yeah,
has no idea what does and doesn't apply. But in my cluster, it does know, which is just amazing. Jonny, who did we talk to? We had somebody on the stream, I think, where they were saying that it was like it's basically a Prometheus query that happens, where it actively queries the cluster and asks the cluster to tell it the
yeah,
information it needs to show what is and isn't going to be affected.
exactly. That's the logic I was talking about. Yeah.
No
So,
idea. I can't remember. Too
yeah.
old.
Sorry, Subin, I think I talked over you there.
No, yeah. I was just mentioning that that's exactly the logic I was talking about. That PromQL is what is run on the cluster. We tried to make a minor enhancement. It's still in beta, where you can give a cluster ID. For example, if you have multiple clusters, you can give in your cluster ID, and if it is connected to insights and all that, we can basically do an analysis based on that specific cluster ID, so that we can give a more relevant update planning information.
That is awesome. That is an awesome feature, because like mainly we use this tool, from my experience in consulting, we use this tool all the time because our customers are in disconnected environments, right? And so we're trying to get information that maybe they don't have. Obviously, you can't get to it from the internet. So if they're not in a place where they can go and easily access their console, we would use this tool to kind of like walk through, hey, here's what it's going to take to get you to 415.11.
Yeah.
Being able to use the cluster ID, I mean, obviously in a disconnected, it's not going to matter anyways, but like using this tool to be able to like, hey, check it out. On this cluster, here's the path. On this cluster, here's the path. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. We're still working on it. I hear the complaint. Most of the people who are in this situation, who want to plan something, they don't have access to the cluster. So they use this, but they miss on that specific PromQL query happening on the cluster. So sometimes the planning decisions are not really accurate. So I'm just going to put that news out there that you guys have to go to the console or request the user to share the console and figure out if so that missing piece of information is important.
Of course, it has to be a connected cluster for that to work in the tool.
Yeah. And we have changed the terminology from conditional edges to known issues. So you can see the known issues here, and it gives you more details about the known issues. But you really need to check if the known issues is applicable for the cluster you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that information is not here. All right. So let me come back to the slide and talk about life cycle phases. So the one question I get often is, we did a GA and that particular path is in the fast channel. When is it coming into the stable channel? Like, how many times do you get that question?
We don't get it a lot, mostly because we proactively bring it up whenever there's a release. I think for the 60 or so days afterwards, until it goes from fast into stable, we tend to bring it up every week. It's generally available. You can update today, fully supported using fast channel, but it's not in stable yet.
Exactly. So both the fast and stable, both are GA. We do a bit of a promotion thing here where we wait for 45 to 90 days to see if any regression issues are there, and then we qualify them into stable. But there's actually no difference between fast channel artifacts and stable channel ones. It's the same thing. There's no additional code or thing done. Um, the only thing we do is just wait for some time to make sure that customers are happy, and if we get some feedback from early adopters, we try to make sure that that feedback is sent to our conservative users, so that they can benefit, and that's the 45 to 90 day delay for YStream. And
Yeah.
for ZStream, we take a minor 7-day delay so that we still don't miss anything.
Yeah, I think that's. I don't know if or I want to reinforce what you said there, which is once the release is out there, it doesn't change. So
Yeah.
as it goes from candidate to fast to stable to EUS, nothing about that release changes. And if there's an issue that's discovered, if it's severe enough, it gets pulled, and then the fix gets put into the next one.
No, we used to pull it, but we don't pull it anymore. What
Okay.
we do is we either convert that to a known issue. So that's an important change. So we
Okay.
convert that to a known issue, and then the fix would probably come in the next Z version, or maybe after 2 weeks, whenever the
Okay.
bug is fixed.
But it's not like if you so let's pick on like 4.15.3.
Uh-huh.
It's not like if we discover in fast there's an issue in 4.15.3 before that release 4.15.3 goes to stable, we're not going to go back in and change something in it.
No.
Instead, like you said, it would be documented as a known issue,
Yeah.
and then in 4.15.4 it would be actually addressed.
Yeah. So I got some question here. Subin, I'm not using disconnected, but could there be a tool that could, use the metadata from a cluster? Yeah, we are working on it. I think that previous tool which I showed, we are still working on trying to get all the cluster ID information to get that detail, because the PromQL relies on a lot of metadata, and we haven't really figured out if we can export the metadata from a disconnected cluster and execute it. That might be a good idea, but we can think about it.
It's an interesting concept because I always think of disconnected clusters as being in like secure enclaves where you can't really get things back out.
Yeah.
But I guess that's not always true, right? Sometimes it's not, like a government, secure thing where there's only one direction type of movement type stuff. Sometimes it's just we disconnect things, but we can move things just over sneakernet.
Well, so it doesn't have to be always, right? For example, the disconnected cluster could be in a nuclear submarine, which goes out into the field and comes back once a year. So when they are back once a year and they have a maintenance window, in that small period, we can do something like that.
Yeah.
So
Or
it doesn't have to be live.
or a cruise ship, right? Shorter
Yeah.
periods of time, but same concept. So there is an earlier question here, which I don't know when it's appropriate to ask this, but I'll do it now. So Tolga asks, can we replace nodes while upgrading the cluster instead of upgrading current ones?
So again, it depends. If you have additional nodes, I don't know if you are on AWS or Azure or cloud or someplace, but let's say you're on bare metal, and if you have additional nodes, you can add to the OpenShift. It's going to be a bit of a pain, but you can do that, and then create machine config pools and create machine config pool A, B, and then do a canary update. Yeah,
That was my thought as well. Is you could do it at the granularity of the machine config pool, because you would effectively pause the existing pool, create a new one, and join the nodes to it, and it would get the new updates, and then more or less delete all of the nodes from the original machine config pool.
Yeah. I don't think we have that completely automated, but yeah, you can do that actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, coming back to this one, I just want to emphasize the lifecycle phases here. We have the full support on the top here, and the maintenance support and the EUS. So this was the lifecycle phases. A lot of our customers have seen, but this has changed. So I'm going to talk about that big change which has come. So what we saw was that most of our users, if they're having mission critical applications, they want to actually stay on a version for a longer time. But we reached this point where we have this end of license, and it's like a big wall. You can't really cross that wall. There are a couple of ways to do it. One is you can raise a support exception and say, okay, please move this end of license for me, move it a little away. Or the other way is that you have currently we have a 24-month. Previously we had a 24-month life cycle period. We can extend it. So what we have done is this was the existing life cycle where for EUS release we had a 6 month of extended update support. What we have done is we have added a new support phase, and this is applicable for all even versions from 4.14, and any customer can buy this add-on SKU to get this additional 12-month of life cycle. And this life cycle is called EUS term 2, and the 6 month which a lot of you have used to is called the term 1. So let me show you the diagram. Maybe this is much more easier to understand. So you have the EUS versions, which are the even versions. You have the green color, the 6-month EUS. That is now called the EUS term 1. And the new one, which we offer from 4.14 onwards, will be a buy-up option. It's an optional buy-up where you can get additional 12 months of support. So overall, if you are on EUS from 4.14, you can get 36 months, 3 years of support. So this is going to help a lot of our customers and users who are having mission critical applications, and they want to stay for a longer period.
I think that's really important. 36 months is a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that knowing that has 3.11 gone fully out of support yet? If it's not, we've got to be like within moments of that happening. But 3.11 was released 4 years ago,
maybe more. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, 36 months is just, when you think about it, so there's 3 releases of Kubernetes per year, which means that there's 3 releases of OpenShift per year. So 36 months means 9 releases back will be supported through this method. And like, I know we've been getting, I'm sure you can go into many details about why we made this change, but like, there are industries, customers who they can't work within those update windows. It takes them 6, 8, 10, 12 months just to do the testing for the upgrades to make sure nothing's going to break. And that's just at the cluster level, not even their applications, which can take another 6 months.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's the other way around. But it's an 18-month upgrade cycle, and now I'm historically or previously I was completely out of date or out of support already. And so I don't know. I think this is really major, and I think it's an impressive commitment from our engineering folks in particular, who are agreeing to a long time of supporting the same things, of writing code and backporting fixes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you need to really bring Steve Gordon on this Ask the Admin, because he's the man behind all this. Um, Getting a lifecycle extension is a complicated task, and working with Steve Gordon, it's hard stuff. I think it's a bit unappreciated also, because there's so many moving parts for OpenShift that we have to make sure that all of them align so that this can be extended. So definitely get Steve Gordon on this call to talk more on this whole process and how this is done.
I might have to make amends with Steve. I might have embarrassed him the last time I was on a call with him, because the first time I ever met Steve, literally weeks after I joined Red Hat, we did a presentation together, and so I was on this call, and I called out Steve as being like one of the most impressive presenters I've ever seen, because he was sitting down, typing a password with one hand, holding a microphone with the other hand, and saying completely different all at the same time. And like anybody who's watched a live stream, I can't talk and type different things, like let alone doing it one-handed or anything like that. It's to this day, it blows my mind. Anyways, Johnny, we should definitely see if we can get Steve on for a number of different.
I made a note.
A lot of things.
Yep, I made a note for it.
Yeah, I think he can do a better job explaining this, but I'll just show this table, and I just want to say that the EUS term, which you are used to before, it has become EUS term 1, and we have a new additional EUS term 2, which is an optional buy-up for 12 months to extend to 3 years.
Yeah, that's just incredible to me.
I really want to talk about.
Releases.
Sorry about that. I just want to talk about a few other things which my team is excited to talk about. My team is working on a couple of things which are going to make, I think, OpenShift update really cool, and we are hoping that more people would be excited to try updates often. So one of the feature we have, my team member Peter Muller is working on, and that feature is a status command. So the problem statement is that the OpenShift update, we have a lot of operators and we have different configurations. So every update for every different cluster is different, actually, because of the underlying components, the matrix of components. So it's hard to figure out what went wrong sometimes. You need to go through multiple components and figure out what went wrong and why it went wrong, and find the right documentation to fix it. So we're trying to work on the first layer so that later on we can add an AI to this. And the first layer is to have a status command or status API. So this is kind of opening up the black box of update and trying to expose all the different components and how they update, and exactly show at what period which component bubbles up or is updating and what the issue is with it. So I had a cool demo, but I don't want to show that demo. I just want to show the slides. This is too tiny. Sure, thanks. So right now it's just a command. If you execute it, you will see this. It has a bunch of components. On the top, in the tiny letters, it shows the control plane, how much percentage of update is happening. Right now, if you come close to the screen, you can see it's just 3%. And it shows the control plane nodes. There are 3 of them here, and the worker pool nodes. I don't know, I guess there are 10 nodes here. So the status command basically shows all the components which are affected by an update. And it tries to give a picture of how much time the update takes. And for example, right now, the update it just took 2 minutes. But if I go to the next slide, 44 minutes are done, and about 97% of the update has happened. And you can see that we were updating towards 4.15.10, I think, and one of the control plane has completed, and the other two control plane nodes are pending and draining. And during updates, draining issue is one of the common issues. So instead of going to each and every node to figure out which node is draining, you can actually get a complete picture of this. And then you can also see here that the worker pool nodes are updating after the control plane nodes have began. And below, you will find a bit more detailed information about worker pool. So, Sally, do you like it?
I do. And I really like this because it simplifies finding information. Clearly all of this is already available, inside of the cluster.
Mhm.
So I like that it puts it all in one place that's easily accessible. I like that it summarizes it, and I like that it gives you that, clear and concise, here is the overall status. I've looked at updates in OpenShift 4 since before OpenShift 4.1 was released, right? And you get this, overview of what all the cluster operators are doing, and then it hits the machine config updates where it's updating CoreOS and all that, and you get very little feedback aside from the one line that gets printed inside of like OC get CO or looking at the cluster operators in the GUI. And I really like this because this is all one command. Like each time you enter the command, all of this prints out.
Well, I would recommend run a watch command, and it's more like an experience when you run top command in Linux. I don't know if you have run it recently. It just
Yep.
shows the overall system, and so this also shows the overall OpenShift system and during the update process. And in this particular screenshot, I wanted to highlight um, one of the issue with one particular node, and it basically shows that the node is unavailable. So which has made this particular update problematic. And we now know that it's because of this node. And we have added one more flag. I think it's called health detail. I can't see it well. Yeah, detail is equal to health. And that kind of lists a little bit more details on why that particular node failed. So you can get more information with respect to KCS article or bug or any other helpful text from the documentation. So instead of you using Google search or documentation and all that, it's all here. And so we wanted this to be the baseline foundation step where later we can add an AI model to really assist with fixing it and maybe even writing some rules and automation to go ahead and fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even just simple things like highlighting which node in, again, very clear way, which node is the one that we're waiting on. You said a moment ago that the cordon and drain operation is often the longest part, simply because we have to wait on the application to gracefully terminate and then allow its pods to be restarted in accordance with all of the rules that go along with that, right? Deployment rules, pod disruption budget, etc. So seeing that and being able to look at and say, oh, okay, nothing has gone wrong. It's just I'm waiting. I think that alone is an important step. I've been working a lot with bare metal clusters lately, so I'm curious to see. Physical servers take, relatively speaking, ages to reboot.
Yeah.
And so there's been more than one occasion where I'm like, why is this taking so long? Why is this node down for so long? And it's because, it's got 2 terabytes of memory and it wants to take 10 minutes to go through and scan everything.
Yeah.
And so just having that type of visibility of, oh, it's unavailable because it's rebooting and it's been rebooting for, however long, that's helpful.
I think you can run this command, go have a coffee, or come back later, and then you can still check, what percentage of improvement has happened. Earlier, nobody knew what was happening because it was kind of like a black box, and you just need to probe in multiple places to see if things happen. But this gives you that. It's kind of like a progress bar to figure out where we are. I mean, if you have done the update previously and you knew that it took 4 hours and today it took 3 hours, so you know that it's going to take 1 more hour.
Yeah, our Hope 9, it takes infinity. It's not like remember the old file copy dialogues where it would update like every second, and it was based off of how much data had been transferred in the previous seconds. It would be like 4 days, 7 years, 3 seconds.
Well, we can promise that that's not going to happen because we do have some thresholds after
Yeah.
which we know that the update has become problematic. All right, I don't want to talk too much about status command, but let's go to the next exciting thing, rollback. Um, so in OpenShift, we have the Y stream and Z stream, Y stream being the minor version. What we're thinking is that, first of all, we are not thinking about Y stream rollback. That's a very complicated thing. We are not looking at supporting that. But with respect to Z stream, I think that's a possibility we are exploring. We tried running ZStream rollback for a couple of clusters. I think it could be a possibility for 4.14 onwards. And this is taking some more time because we want to be 100% sure that the rollback, when it goes to the customer, uh, it doesn't fail. Um, so the use case of ZStream rollback is, let's say you update it to Z and then you want to go back for some reason. That's the use case. And it might not seem pretty big, but if you just calculate the amount of time and testing some of our customers take to update, even for Z versions, they take about 6 months.
Hmm.
And it's a special cases. I mean, it takes time for them to update mainly because they have some applications and there is some API dependency, and so they have a dev team and they need to develop their operators to update. It's going to take 6 months to develop and then test it. Let's say they don't want to do it and they have to roll back. This is an option. So I think a lot of users are excited about trying out ZStream rollback. My thinking is that this is going to be offered in coordination with the support engineer. So a person has to raise a support case, and then we help them,
I
and
mean,
we have the QE engineers testing it.
this is huge to me because
100%.
historically our policy has always been you only go forward,
Yes,
and it doesn't matter what problems there are, it doesn't matter what's failing, it doesn't matter what's broken. You always go forward until the update is complete. And if you wanted to roll back, it was you deploy a new cluster at whatever version you wanted to roll back to,
Mhm.
and migrate your workload. So I'm this is huge to me, and I think it'll have.
Hmm.
I wonder if, and I don't think this will happen, but like, does that mean that we might be more I'm going to use the word cavalier with some changes in the Z streams? Like, clearly, we're not going to do like API changes or something like that.
Yeah,
Uh, those are reserved for the Ys, the 4.14, 4.15, 4.16.
exactly. Yeah,
But like, I don't know if, I'll say CoreOS, like, because we can roll back, in this version, in 4. I'm making up numbers here. So in 4.23.17, we use rel 10, and in 4.17.24, we use rel 10.2. So a major change to the underlying operating system. So if there's driver compatibility issues, if there's something like that, again, I think bare metal these days, I can just flip it back, with this rollback thing and have it work that way. I don't know. I actually don't know when do we release? Do we coordinate our RCOS major version changes like rel 8 to rel 9 with
I
Y
believe
stream?
it's Y stream. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so we're not really opening it up to all the use cases. We are trying to restrict it. We also have a new rollback command, which is in works. So this is going to be very curated list of rollback options.
Hmm.
And for example, in this diagram, if you're on 4.15.2 and you recently updated to 4.15.14, and you're not happy with it for some reason, so in that case, we specifically only allow you to roll back to the previous Z version you are on. So we do track the previous Z version you are on. It's stored in a CVO somewhere. So we use that data to just roll back to the previous version.
And I seem to remember hearing about this a while ago, and I think the way it was described to me was that you can't do there is no rolling back further. You couldn't go 4.15.14 to 4.15.2 to 4.15.1. It's you can go back from 4.15.14 to 4.15.2 because that was the previous version, but if you were to click the rollback button again, it would consider 4.15.14 to be the previous version, so it would flip back to that one or something.
No, I don't know about that one. But you cannot go back to 4.14.32 or something. Let's say
Yeah.
you updated, you did update to the next Y version. We don't allow it to roll back to the previous Y version.
But
So the
it's
maximum,
specifically you can only go back to the last Z stream within the same minor
Y,
release that
exactly.
you got.
Yeah. And all of that is controlled by this rollback command, so that we don't let the users just jump to any version they want.
No, I'm very happy to see this. I'm sure the support folks are as well, because I feel like it should simplify their life quite a bit, because now if something goes wrong, it's just roll back and then we'll figure out what happened, instead of, oh no, it's a pry 2 pry 1 because things are broken and we have to figure out how to move it forward. Instead we can relieve some of that pressure.
The next topic, this is still in works. Again, it's not completely on the roadmap. We're investigating this. So we have seen that it's possible to. If you use Hypershift, you can update the control plane and you can just not update the worker nodes, right? So you have the hosted cluster and the managed cluster. You can just keep updating the hosted cluster and not deal with the management cluster. Now, you can do the same thing with OCP as of today. You can do it with machine config pools, but we want to give this option where you can only do control node updates. And it is possible. It's also based on the upstream work which was done. I think the KEP for that was 3935. So in the upstream, they have increased the skew to n-3 between the control plane and the nodes. So this gives us an opportunity where we can give a command to just update the control plane. So if the control plane and the worker node can be a little more skewed, and the end result is that the workload disruption is not there. The user can continue to update control plane and get all the CVs and bugs in the control plane fixed, and keep the workload untouched. And after maybe a couple of months, and they hit a certain threshold, you have to update the worker node. So this kind of helps users to make them happy.
Did this require upstream changes? Because I thought it was a Kubernetes limitation, the n-2.
Yes, and they changed that to n-3. So in the upstream, they have actually implemented it. And so in the downstream, we are trying to get this working so that we can provide the separation of control plane and worker node. Right now, when you do an update, let's say 4.14.5, the control plane update triggers the worker node update.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so it's together. And what we want to do is something like this here, that it's not continuous. It's not together.
Yeah.
You keep updating control plane, and after a certain threshold, you're forced to catch up on the worker node. And in this way, you're trying to make sure that the workload disruption doesn't happen. This is still in planning. It's not on the roadmap yet. Again, I just don't want to give any hopes to anyone watching this. But because of the upstream n-3 change, there is a possibility that this can be done.
Yeah, that's very wow. Our Hope 9, does that answer your question, I think? So I think the alternative or the other way to do that would be to pause the MCP, kind of like we do with the EUS to EUS update process.
Yeah.
Pause the MCPs and then update the control plane from 4.12 to 4.14, and then unpause the machine control or machine config pools, and then they would do a single jump and a single reboot. But this is like an actual. You don't have to pause anything. You don't have to tell it anything other than update control plane, update worker nodes, and they're managed separately.
Yeah. Well, in the EUS, I think there is a time limit on how long you can keep the worker node MCP paused. I think it is some 90 days or something. I forget right now. I need to check the documentation, but you have to unpause the machine config pool and update the worker node eventually. But this one, that delay is much longer.
Interesting. I didn't know that there was a time limit on that. I mean, it makes sense that there is, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, 60 days, I think.
Okay.
And I just want to talk about the last thing. We're trying to work on some AI changes in our product. And what we're trying to do is maybe think about a situation where a future where there's no channels, there's no fast channel, there's no stable channel, and we just have a default channel, and the user is not even seeing it. So, I mean, this is just a prototype, but the user is seeing an UI where, if let's say they are on 4.14.10, a future where what's the next. I mean, we recommend what's the next Z version to go on. So, for example, here you're on 4.14.10, and the next Z version we recommend is 4.14.32. But we also give you something like a Patch Tuesday. I don't know if you remember Patch Tuesday from Microsoft. Yeah, I think that was the second week of every month, second Tuesday of every month. Yeah, and so we give you a previous Z version, and this is like a monthly roll up, and we also plan to add some kind of a machine learning recommendation here, so that we know that for the cluster this recommendation is happening, this particular path is better, safer to apply. And we want to include the update app, the graph app, which I showed before, into the console, so that you can show the path of you can do the planning purpose on the console itself rather than go to the update app. So these are some of the things which my team is working on. Some of it are on the roadmap. We can do one more session just to show what's on the roadmap and what's not. But these are some exciting ideas where we want to include AI and solve some of the problems, and make updates much more pleasant.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. This concept is really interesting to me because I think today, I would say almost, at least for me, in my background, I feel like this emotional attachment to stable and emotional fear of fast. And, reality is there isn't, I don't think that there's a lot of reason for that aside from, it's just every update, every channel, every piece of software that I've used in my entire 20-something year career, like being the first to get an update is perceived as risky. And so doing away with any type of update channel for something that, arguably, and I've said this before, OpenShift is a concentrator of applications. So it's one platform that has many different things on it. And if something happens to that one platform, it affects many of those things. I feel like it would be very much a mental or an emotional thing to overcome with not having the, again, perceived stability of the stable channel.
Well, think about how much time you spend like just explaining the difference between fast and stable, and everything else, right?
How many
It
hundreds of
simplifies the
times have you heard
conversation.
me say that, Johnny?
Yeah, and it just I think it makes that topic of updating a lot more linear, right? Instead of well, you could go fast, you could go stable, you could do whatever. Look, dude, you could do it this way or you could do it this way. And when you think about updating like a rail system, when you're pulling stuff in from satellite, you're just subscribing to a channel. There might be a lifecycle environment on the back end, but you as a front end person, you don't know that, right? You're just getting RPMs. So I mean, it's the same. I think that this is a good idea. I think that this simplifies. It takes a lot of the complexity out of it. It takes a lot of the fear factor out of it. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Exactly. I mean, we really want to make the update experience similar to updating your iPhone. And I don't know if you've seen the recent iPhone update screen. You'll see there's a beta channel and then there's a stable thing, and they want you to try the latest. But if you want latest from the beta, you can also try it. But the options are very limited. It's not very confusing, and they give you the details of what's included and what's not there. So to make an informed decision, all the information is out there. Nothing is too hidden, and you don't need to really probe somebody to figure out, should I do this or should I do that? All right, that's it from me. I don't know. This is my first podcast. I hope you liked it. Thanks.
This has been amazing. It's funny, this is what episode 126.
26.
Every single one of these episodes, I have learned something. This one is certainly no different, and I think importantly, it has updated or updated a lot of my knowledge. No pun intended. Because updates are not something that even though we do them regularly, they're not something that we necessarily put a lot or pay a lot of attention to unless things go wrong. And so seeing all of this magic behind the curtains, and I said before, a lot of having an understanding of all the effort and all the consideration and all of the things that go into updates, to me, I mean, I just want to point out, like, Subin, your role is product management for the update process, the upgrade process, right? Like, that's how seriously we take it. We have Subin dedicated to this. Like, so I think it's amazing. And I think that this has just been, for me, tremendously helpful to keep my knowledge up to date. So thank you.
Thank you.
So for the audience, just the last couple of minutes here, if you have any questions, thoughts, comments, etc., please don't hesitate to post those into chat. We'll do our best to answer those here before we end the stream. As I said before, if you aren't watching us live, if you are watching us live and you think of something after we end, please don't hesitate to reach out. So you can reach me via email at sully@redhat.com or Jonny, Jonny, @redhat.com. You can also find us in various places across the internet. I think we're both on LinkedIn and Reddit and Slack. And I don't know if do you still have the shortcut for the Kubernetes Slack handy, Johnny?
I do. Hang on just a second. I was just looking it up.
Yeah. So if you're on Kubernetes Slack, so kubernetes.slack.com, there is an OpenShift users channel there that you can join. And, it's me and Johnny and 3,000-ish of our closest friends. So by all means, come join us there. If you have not joined the Kubernetes Slack, when you go to their page, there is an invite bot that you have to use, and you just plug in your email and it sends you a link to that. So don't get confused. We've actually shown that here on the stream before. You just have to go through that process to join. What happened to the What's Next that we talked about in April? So the What's Next stream did not happen because things changed with this last one. So thank you for bringing that up, rHope9. So historically, for the last, 3 years, we have live streamed the What's Next, which is the roadmap, and the What's New, which is the, what's new in each release here on Red Hat live streaming. So with this most recent What's Next, we used a tool called Kaltura, for both internal and external folks to see the roadmap. So the problem with that was you needed to actually go and register and get an invite for that event to be seen while it was happening live. And there was no ability to interact, to ask questions or anything like that. So I don't know. I think that we're going to change that process. We might come back here to YouTube/Twitch in the future, but I think that there are going to be some changes. That being said, the what's next has been posted onto YouTube. As soon as I can find the right tab here, that has where to go. So it has been posted onto YouTube. Apparently there was some delay or something or some error that happened when they were trying to post it onto the normal landing page, the what's new, what's next landing page. Here we go. So I will post this link into chat here. So that's the stream from the most recent what's next, the most recent, or excuse me, not stream. That was the presentation of the most recent what's next that we have then posted to YouTube as a regular video rather than a live stream. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I don't know the process for the next one. Hopefully we'll do a better job of promoting it. Last time it was the email with the invite was sent out across Red Hat of, hey, come watch the what's next on Kaltura. And in the invite body, it said, oh, and please invite your customers and anyone else that you would like to be able to see it. But it was very much a secondhand thing. So we'll work on that. We'll get better at it. Hopefully that video is helpful to anybody who finds it. With that, thank you, Subin. Again, this has been very, very informational, very, very helpful for me. And just me personally, updating my knowledge has been amazing and learning a lot of new things too. I like that upgrade status. I'm excited to see that one, especially as I go through and update various labs and stuff like that. I get better at these processes. So slide deck, yes, should be posted to speaker deck. Again, I don't know what has happened with that process. I'll check in on it. I saw Colleen posted something in Slack earlier today, or maybe yesterday about it. So I'll check on that. Yeah, thank you, Subin. Greatly appreciate you joining us today. And you're welcome back anytime you want to come and talk about anything. Happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Jonny, good to see you, my friend. Glad to see you're
Yeah, man.
up and about. And
Feeling better.
As I figure out which buttons to click, I will hand over to you for last words.
Yeah. So, hey, Subin, not bad for your first time, man. You did it. I told you it'd be easy. I told you it's just a bunch of nerds talking, man. So you came in and you killed it. So thank you for taking the time. And I know it's like wedged in the middle of your busy week. So thank you seriously for taking the time to come talk to us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for your support. Thank you.
All right. Bye, y'all. See you next week.
Okay. Bye.